Yeah, I'm thinking that 4 is not a great. So, Lucci, do you mind taking this dark?
Is it hard to wait? It looks good, right? It's real maple syrup. Made right here in Hartford.
Yeah, try it now. What you think?
You like it?
Hey there, Hartford Public Library. This is Collin McMullan from the Hartford Maple Syrup Club. I wanted to show you the difference between a few different kinds of maple trees that I know. I'm in front of my house on Beacon Street in Hartford, and this tree is a Norway maple. This tree we tapped this year. I can show you the hole where we drilled and hung a bucket. It's starting to grow over that hole now. The tree will repair itself after you tap it. Our tree has red leaves. It's a type of Norway maple that's cultivated for its special foliage. So this tree was planted here by the people who owned the house before us. But you can see the Norway maple bark is pretty distinctive. It doesn't look at all like sugar maple bark. It has it's much smoother. It doesn't get shaggy, and it sort of makes a crisscross pattern sometimes. The leaves, when they're green, often Norway maple leaves are green also, just like sugar maple leaves this time of year, or after they come out. And the leaves actually look pretty similar on sugar and Norway maples. It's more difficult to distinguish them that way. But the bark is really the best sign for getting to know your trees. And I really like to think about how to get to know our trees as a way of trying to be closer to them and figure out how to live in harmony with them and with everything in nature. That's part of what I believe in as a person. So I'll show you down here. This is a big sugar maple that my neighbor has, my friend Jeremy. And this tree, that one behind me, that's a sugar maple tree. You can see that the bark is much more shaggy, and it kind of flakes off in these big chunks. So that's a mature sugar maple. And this tree has already leafed out in its full canopy, and it's got these big leaves. And those are maple leaves up there. I'm here in Kinney Park right now showing you our collection system. So we have the green tubing behind me that you can see running between the trees. And I'm here at the bottom of our run. All the way up the hillside behind me, there's probably about 60 or more taps in trees up there. It's a mix of sugar maple, red maple, and Norway maple. And all three of those types of maple trees produce sap that you can use to make maple syrup. But sugar maple, of course, is the traditional for this area. But Norway maple also produce a good amount of sap, and it has a high sugar content similar to sugar maple. Red maple has lower sugar content and produces less sap, but also possible to make syrup from those. And you can see that tubing. It's a plastic tube, and it hangs on the tree. Generally, people leave them hanging on the trees year-round. They don't have the hole drilled in the tree year-round. They'll only do that when they want to make a tap in it. But the rest of the time, the tubing just hangs there, and then you can use it next season again without having to hang it up again. So that's one method of collecting sap, and it's a little bit more efficient. than doing it with buckets and bags in terms of labor, because basically you have everything run downhill and collected in a large tank like this one we have here. I'm at the bottom of our run, like I said, and the tubing is this right here, so the sap would flow through this line. This is a small diameter tubing. It's 3/16 of an inch inside diameter, and at that size you can get a natural gravity-based suction if you have enough of an elevation drop from the top of your line to the bottom. You can actually get natural vacuum, so it's pulling the sap out of the tree, and that increases your yield. In commercial maple syrup production, they use actual electric pumps, vacuum pumps, which put suction on these lines and pull the sap that way. But you can do a natural, and there are some people doing gravity and natural on a production scale too, like that. I visited an off-the-grid farmer in Vermont that was doing it that way one time. But yeah, so you can collect this your sap in this big tank, and then what we do is we pump it up out of the stream bed. We pump it with that large blue tube that you can see coiled up there into another tank that's in a truck, and we bring that to our evaporator. But of course, the other way to do it is the old-fashioned galvanized bucket on a tree. We use those, and we also use sap sacks, which is like a plastic bag version of that. And I'll show you briefly what you would do if you were to tap a tree and produce maple syrup. It's not the season for it anymore. It's too late to do it. Basically, you would want to tap your trees right around February 1st in this area, even earlier sometimes, depending on what the weather's like. But if you were to do it this time of year, you wouldn't get any sap really, because you need freezing nights and warm days to get it. It's that freeze-thaw cycle that makes the sap flow. So this time of year, I wouldn't normally do this, and I won't drill a hole because I don't want to hurt the tree, but to show you, what you want to do is take a regular cordless drill. That's what most people use, and you want a 5/16 inch drill bit, and what you do is you want to tilt your drill at a slight angle so that the angle of the drill is going in uphill slightly, uphill, so that the sap will flow out the hole that you're making. And you drill in a hole about 1.5 to 2 inches deep, and then you drive one of these spiles into that hole. I'll show you one. And sometimes they're called taps, sometimes they're called spiles. There's all different kinds of them, but this is a nice reusable stainless steel one, which you can buy from some maple syrup equipment suppliers. I like this one supplier called Smoky Lake, but there are many different options out there. And take a hammer or a rock or anything you've got and tap it into the tree gently. It's tapered. The spile, this end of the spile is tapered, so as you tap it in, it's going to seal that hole up really tight. And that means that all the sap isn't going to leak out around it. It'll just go in through the spile and drip into your bucket. So you pound that spile into the tree real light until the sound changes, because it's plugged up. And then you hang your bucket on the tree, and the sap will start, if it's the right conditions, the sap will start dripping into your bucket right away. And so then your only job after that is to go around and empty your buckets and boil down the sap and make your maple syrup. I'm showing you our evaporator here, where we make maple syrup in Keeney Park, and how to do it, just briefly, because it's actually not the season right now. What you do, generally a lot of people cook it over a wood fire. That helps with the flavor, they think, and cooking it slowly with wood over a long period of time gives it a nice smoky and rich flavor that people enjoy. And this is a wood stove which is built for that purpose in the maple syrup industry. It's called an arch. And the evaporator consists of these pans, and there's a few different pans. The back pan here is very deep, and it contains a really vigorous boil when it's going. We have a steam hood on it which collects the steam, and we actually use it for a sauna that we made. It's called the Tree Spa, and I'd like to invite everyone to come and check it out sometime. It'll be open next season, as long as everything's finished up with all this coronavirus business by then. In Kinney Park, that's where we keep it. And this front pan here, where my hand is, this is the syrup pan. So the sap boils in the back pan, and it gets condensed and refined as it boils, and ends up being closer to syrup here in the front pan. The two pans are connected by plumbing, as you can see right there. A couple of valves, and it's all stainless steel, food grade. And this front pan is where the finished syrup is. So when it's boiling, we check it. You can tell when it's almost done by checking the temperature. And if you check, generally water boils at 212 degrees Fahrenheit. And so syrup, maple syrup, or actually any syrup, maybe like a sugar syrup or any other blend of sugar and water, basically. That syrup temperature is around 220 degrees Fahrenheit, so it boils at a higher temperature because it's much more dense, of course, with all the sugar in it. And so you can tell that you're getting close to the right density when your thermometer reads 220. And you can make maple syrup at home. Lots of people do. You can boil it on your stovetop. It does produce a lot of steam, so some people find that it will make your paint peel or your wallpaper peel off, which if you're trying to refinish your house, maybe you want the wallpaper to peel off anyway, like I did over the summer. But basically, other than that, you can set up something outside. A lot of people build these sort of temporary wood stoves out of bricks or fire bricks or something, and set a couple of stainless steel pans on top. You can use like steam tray pans, the stainless steel ones, the solid ones, and boil it that way, and just scoop the finished sap or the partially finished syrup from one into the other. Put the syrup one over the cooler part of the fire, basically, and keep the other one over the hotter part of the fire. You can also just do it. I have a friend, Connor, who does it on a rocket stove, which is a kind of nifty design where you can use really small pieces of wood to boil water or cook food. And you can look them up online, rocket stoves. I've made a couple of them too. They're pretty cool. But yeah, he makes his maple syrup on that, and he says it works great. So there's a lot of things you could figure out, ways to do it, but this is kind of the professional level size. This is actually a very small one for professionals. They would have one that was at least probably twice this size for a big operation. Some of them are enormous. This one is 2 feet by 6 feet, and that's how they normally talk about them in those kind of dimensions. And yeah, we burn hardwood, and a mix of hardwood and softwood, pine and oak and whatever we have, maple wood, anything. Yeah, it's a lot of fun boiling it. It takes a long time to boil. Normally you boil 40 gallons of sap to get 1 gallon of syrup. So you can imagine how long that would take to boil off all that water. You have to boil away the major portion of the water So it takes a while, and it can be kind of a social thing, like get your friends together, your family together, and hang out around the fire and tell stories while it's boiling. That goes back many generations, those kind of practices, I'm sure. All the way, maple syrup is something that settlers in this area learned how to do from native people, of course, and it's still an important industry for some native tribes. The Passamaquoddy have a large maple syrup operation in Maine, and the Pequot people had a maple syrup business before they started their casino business. So, that kind of tradition is certainly alive and well with the indigenous peoples today too. And we do try to honor those traditions and respect where we inherited this from. So yeah, that's our evaporator. That's how we boil it here in Keeney Park, making maple syrup with the Hartford Maple Syrup Club at Keeney Park Sustainability Project. Thanks.